Welcome to Going Deeper, Photography as a Spiritual Path. I'm Judy Hancock Holland. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a saint when I grew up. That hasn't worked out so well for me, but even then, there was a spiritual hunger in me, a longing to be connected to something greater, something sacred. I've given up on sainthood, I'm afraid, but that hunger is still a strong part of me. And photography has become an important way that I can find and express that kind of connection to spirit. Of course, there are many ways of being spiritual and many reasons to make photographs. The two may or may not go together for you, but I'd like to share how they do for me. This is a very personal topic, and I don't presume to tell you how to go about your photography or your spiritual life. But maybe my thoughts can catalyze something for you, even if you don't consider yourself a spiritual person. I invite you to take from my talk what is useful to you and just set the rest aside. And please, if I use language that doesn't fit for you, words like God or creation, please substitute in your mind what does work for you. This is not a presentation about religion. It's about spirituality and how photography can be a part of that. It's probably a good idea to tell you what I mean when I use those words, religion and spirituality. I'm using the term religion to mean more of an organized system, usually involving a doctrine and a spiritual authority in the form of a book or a person. Religion and spirituality can exist separately or together. I've been enriched in my life by my relationships with people from a wide variety of spiritual traditions, and I have deep respect for everyone's right to walk their own path. The term spirituality I'm reusing to refer to a more direct experience of the divine, a sense of being part of some larger mystery. When I make photographs, I see in a way that I don't normally see when I'm in the busy flow of daily life. Most often, I'll get quiet and center myself so that I can become fully present with my subject. It's a kind of meditation, an opening to the sacred, a kind of falling in love with creation, if you will. I become reverent and let the beauty of my subject touch my soul. Only then do I make the photograph, in an effort to share that reverent moment and invite my viewer to allow her soul to be touched too. It wouldn't be too big a stretch to think of the resulting images as hymns of praise. People do all kinds of things to enrich their spiritual lives. Some pray, some meditate, some commune with nature or music, some keep gratitude journals, some engage in service to others. I do all of these things, but photography for me involves all of these and more. It's a central part of my spiritual life. I love this quote by Rumi, who said, "There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." Photography is one of my ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Maybe it is, or can be, for you too. Let me share how that works for me, in hopes that it may spark something for you. We can have a spiritual experience anywhere, but certain places can be more conducive to these spiritual photographic experiences than others. Some of us most readily find our connection to the divine in designated sacred spaces or in organized religion, while others find it elsewhere. We all have our own paths. I like to photograph places of worship, and when I do, I try to do so in a way that conveys the feeling of sacredness rather than just the scene. The humble simplicity of old adobe churches touches me. The cross and the door on this one, made from the skeletons of ancient saguaro cactus, really moved me. For me, saguaros have their own kind of spiritual presence, and it is that, as much as the fact that the building is a church, that moves me. Many people find their spiritual connections in nature or in music. It's no accident that this forest is called Cathedral Grove. Even little kids seem to grow quiet in this setting. They seem to sense the sacredness of the place. Many indigenous peoples find important spiritual connections in certain locations that have been honored for millennia. This mountain, El Capitan, near Monument Valley in northeastern Arizona, is sacred to the Navajo people. As a girl growing up on the prairies, the wide open spaces and endless skies helped me feel connected to something bigger. I remember lying on my back in the tall grasses and watching the clouds move across the blue. It brought home to me that we're so small in the face of the vastness of creation, yet we all have our place. I don't shoot a lot of landscapes, but when I do, I try to convey something of that feeling. Since I moved to Vancouver Island 15 years ago, I've found new places that bring me peace and a sense of spiritual connection. I like to go to those places, and at first just put my camera down and just breathe them in. I think this is an insightful quote by John Sexton. Too often we attempt to force a photograph out of a situation, rather than allow the situation to speak to us. We photographers often talk of capturing an image, and I catch myself saying this too. But when photography is a spiritual practice, we are instead allowing ourselves to be captured, heart and soul, by what we see. Rather than pursuing an image, we open and allow and receive it. The difference can be profound. I encourage you to spend time in the places that feed your soul. Allow the peace or the joy or the reverence to fill you, and only then use your camera to receive the image with gratitude. You can then offer your photograph to others as a gift of spirit. This is a gentle process. It takes time and intention and awareness. I'm most successful in doing this when I'm alone and can be fully present with my subject and my internal experience. There are occasions to experience wonder and awe all around us, all the time, if we just slow down and pay attention. If you don't believe me, just take a walk with a young child. It's easier for me to find beauty in flowers and other conventionally pretty things, but I've also learned to look more closely and find it where I least expect it. The more we practice seeing and photographing in this way, the easier it becomes to both see and live this way. Macro photography and focus stacking have been wonderful means for me to expand this way of viewing the world. It was Einstein who said, "There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle." Turns out this is actually good for our health. A UC Berkeley study of cytokines, a part of our immune system response to health issues such as infection, inflammation, trauma, sepsis, and cancer, resulted in some very interesting findings. That awe, wonder, and beauty promote healthier levels of cytokines suggests that the things we do to experience these emotions, a walk in nature, losing oneself in music, beholding art, has a direct influence upon health and life expectancy. And so I try to be mindful and pay attention as I bumble along my path of life. I try to remember to breathe and to enter into a state of relaxed receptivity. This isn't easy, of course, and I'm no Dalai Lama. I fail at this all the time. I can be as distracted and oblivious as anyone. I just keep bringing myself back to awareness. I sometimes think of the divine as being like a radio station that's always broadcasting. If I want to connect to the sacred, I need to turn on my receiver and tune in as best I can. As I open and tune into creation and let its beauty penetrate my heart, I open also to the Creator. Seeing becomes an act of deep appreciation and even worship. The more finely tuned my internal receiver becomes, the more often I stumble upon moments of spiritual connection and delight that I can celebrate through my lens. Here I was moved by the tenacity and joy of a simple weed thriving in an unlikely place and casting shadow pictures on the wall. In these fallen petals, I can see the lingering, intricate perfection, if only I open to it. I try to open not only my eyes, but also my heart and soul. In that state of relaxed receptivity, I will often notice things that I otherwise would have overlooked. Symbols also seem to jump out at me. When I saw this in a friend's garden, I was struck by the Taoist concept of balance between yin and yang, masculine and feminine. The tree represents the masculine, firm, somewhat rough, physical strength supporting the soft delicacy of the feminine. As I see the world more and more through a spiritual lens, even when I don't have my camera with me, I become more and more able to explore and express my spirituality through the camera lens. Then when I come upon something like this, I don't just see a caterpillar on a tree. I see symbols of transformation, bark peeling away to reveal new life, and the butterfly that waits inside the caterpillar. I stumble upon the sacred where it's been hiding right under my nose all along. When our hearts and souls are open, we can find awe and wonder in something as mundane as the center of a pansy or the play of light on a leaf. When we make ourselves available to grace, then grace can find us. Our lenses and sensors then receive that grace in the form of an image that has soul. Sometimes we go out into the world to seek and photograph something that particularly speaks to us. Even then, an attitude of receptivity will often serve us better than an attitude of acquisitiveness and a drive to get the shot. Whales inspire feelings of awe and humility and mystery in me. They are such enormous creatures that display intelligence and learning and even language. I'm humbled when I see or even think about them. They evoke the spiritual for me. But I have to be mindful. I can get very excited when I get a chance to go out to see whales. I have to remind myself to center myself, to be in a state of readiness to take a photo, yes, but not to lose the magic of the experience of the whales in the process. There can be mystery and joy and sacredness in the bonds we share with the creatures we share our everyday lives with, too. I see a kind of innocent openness and purity here. Those of you who have pets, and especially who have lost a pet, understand the nature of this kind of connection. I feel very grateful when I experience a sense of connection and spiritual resonance with my subject. In Christian terms, I might say that I can feel the glory of God shining through my subject and straight into my heart. Perhaps a Buddhist would say they perceive the Buddha nature of the subject. In any case, when I'm attuned to my subject, every click of the shutter says thank you. And the German mystic Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Spirituality embraces the big questions. What is life all about? What really matters? How are we to live well? How do we die well? When I contemplate the cycles of life, the miracles of birth and growth, decline and death, I sense the sacredness in every stage of life. Often we recognize this in new young things, the emerging bud, or in the full flowering phase of life. I was drawn in by the perfection of the shapes and color and repetition in this camellia blossom in the prime of its life. But to me, as it faded, it became even more beautiful. The Japanese have a concept known as wabi-sabi, which refers to perfect imperfection, the beauty that can be found in decay, decline, and imperfection. I strive to appreciate the wabi-sabi in people as well as in things. And so part of my practice is to notice and honor the cycles of life. Having nourished the tree, the leaf falls to be reabsorbed into the earth and nourish the tree in a new way. This is miraculous, part of the sacred cycle of life. I keep flowers long after other people throw them out. I see the miracle in them, even as they shrivel. Perhaps if we can learn to appreciate the wrinkles and twists of flowers as they decline and die, we can also learn to appreciate that in people and even in ourselves. There are times when I'm so overcome with the magnificence of creation that I'm tempted to use that old-fashioned word, behold. Not a word we use in the modern world, but I want to hold these things up and show them to others so that they too can marvel at the beauty. Just as a jeweler showcases a piece of fine jewelry on a black velvet cloth, I'm moved to showcase the marvels of nature. I've been strongly influenced by the American painter Georgia O'Keeffe, who said, "If you take a flower in your hand and really look at it, it's your world for a moment." The photographs I make from this focused state of mind become like visual prayers of thanksgiving. It may not be traditional nature photography, but it is a style my soul moves me to. Mystery is an integral part of spirituality. The notion of God is far too big for me to grasp. Divine mystery is everywhere. Every once in a while I catch a glimpse, and it takes my breath away. I honor the mystery, and I cherish the glimpses. Doors and windows, especially ajar, symbolize this sense of mystery for me. Astrophotography is a genre that particularly evokes the divine mystery for me. I don't do much astro at all, but I do love it for that quality. This image I made of Comet Neowise reminds me that I can see and understand only a small part of the vastness of creation, and I love that mystery and the fact that I will never understand it all. It humbles me. Peace is an aspect of the divine that I'm especially drawn to. Even as a child, I sought peace. This image invites me into stillness and peaceful solitude. It gives my soul a place to rest. In this kind of stillness, we can get in touch with ourselves and the divine. This image of safe harbor and rest reminds me that as humans, we all need safe harbors and rest from our human struggles. As a photographer, I love the idea of one of my images hanging in someone's home and bringing them peace and rest. The gift I receive in experiencing the scene is converted through my camera into a gift of peace for the viewer. How cool is that? To be able to pass along the gift of grace to another. Buddhists talk about non-attachment. Christians about surrendering to God's will. This is something that has been hard for me, and I keep working on it. It's a spiritual challenge for me. And so this scene was a metaphor for me. The fishing boat moving off in the fog, reminding me that people and situations come into our lives and then leave again. They bear gifts for us. They play a role in our lives, and then they move on. Can I accept and honor the gifts and also let go when it's time? The themes of connection and transience are really key to my understanding of spirituality, and they often show up in my work. I was privileged to take a workshop with the renowned Canadian photographer Freeman Patterson a few years ago. Freeman says, creativity is fundamentally a spiritual process. That awkward and incomplete practice of our connection to each other, to life, to the great mystery of the divine. While solitude can be an important part of spirituality, Ultimately, we're in this life together, and it is in relationship that we find rich opportunities for growth, love, and connection. I believe in the idea that we are all connected, although it's easy to lose sight of that in our busy lives. And so I perceive and celebrate those themes of connection in the world when I pick up my camera. This image I call In Sickness and in Health. It represents for me the idea of being there for each other as we age, decline, and die. And that to me is both beautiful and sacred. If you have ever had the privilege of sitting with someone as they die, you will know something of the profound sacredness that can be part of that experience. When my late husband died, I was shattered, yes, but I was also shaken to my core by the divine mystery of the whole experience. I had not done much photography back in 2007 when my second husband was dying. I wish I had a better photograph of us holding hands. I did the best I could, one-handed with a poor quality camera, and the photo is precious to me. After I remarried in 2012, I made a point of taking a photo of my husband's hand holding mine. To me, it makes a powerful statement about connection and support. It takes such courage to love, knowing that almost certainly death will take one of us away before we are ready for it. This image was taken when the man was palliative, and his wife was supporting him through his journey and also struggling to imagine how she would carry on without him. It was a very sacred time, and they asked that I title this image A Forever Love. Our popular culture is obsessed with youth, but people of all ages long to be seen and accepted just as they are, to have their beauty recognized. We both want and fear to be seen. When we witness each other's vulnerability and strength, we affirm each other. We bow to each other in acknowledgement of both our shared humanity and the divine within us. This can happen in just a moment or last through many years. Service is a part of many spiritual traditions, and offering this kind of photography in service to others is another aspect of spirituality for me. There is beauty in this old woman as she nears the end of her earthly journey with dementia. The portrait is made more poignant by the fact that if you look very closely, you will see that this is not a baby she's holding. It's a doll. I call the image Mothering Remembered. So again, the miracles and sacredness are all around us, in the people we encounter. I pause to witness the simple beauty of the connection between two people on a lovely day. I honor and bless this old couple walking together on a forest path and see that as a metaphor for living life on this earth. None of us have it easy in this life. We all face challenges. I honor this couple's grit in getting out into the world together. My photos have been an important part of my spiritual path as I have dealt with the themes of life and death, loss and aging. It was only recently that I looked back at all my photos of dead and dying flowers and leaves and realized that they're autobiographical and part of my coming to terms with the finiteness of this earthly life. I'm 68 now, and with that age comes an acute awareness that there is much more of my life behind me than ahead of me. However much we may not want to think about it, we are mortal. So I look at dying flowers and I think, will I be able to open to God or the light or the universe as gracefully as this tulip at the end of my life? And I think there's no time like the present to practice that opening. As youth and so-called perfection inevitably fade, can I still see the beauty and the sacredness? Doing so is a spiritual pursuit. This plant is commonly known as a coneflower, but I think of this blossom as a crone flower. It represents beauty and sacredness at the end of life. Through the metaphors I see around me, I remind myself to notice and honor the gifts offered by all human beings, including the no longer young, the physically imperfect, the ones who have been knocked around and damaged by life. Again, I'm far from perfect, and I can fall into negative judgments like anyone else. But photography helps me return to the spiritual truth that we are all human, all connected. It's not all beauty and joy, of course. Grief and loss are also themes that emerge in my work. Loss is a nearly universal experience in life for those of us who live long enough, and grief can very much be seen as a sacred journey. Photography can be part of that, so I'd like to say a bit about what I call memorial photography. This is a very personal image. My second husband, John, was given this bear when he was a 4-year-old blue baby, struggling every day just to breathe and walk, and being raised by an abusive, unrepentant Nazi who had served in the Waffen-SS. Like this bear, John went through a lot. This memorial photo represents to me the magnificence of the human spirit and all it can endure, and still emerge gentle and loving and kind as John did. I took the photo after John died of cancer at age 55 as a tribute to him and his beautiful spirit. This image puts me in mind of my favorite quote from the Velveteen Rabbit. By the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. Using our creativity to honor our lost loved ones can be a healing part of the grief journey. John's favorite jacket brings back the feeling of being held by him, the hugs when he came home from work and I would lay my cheek against this lapel. Creating this image was both a way of honoring him and of feeling closer to him, even in his physical absence. The spiritual connection between us continues. This photo by my friend Heidi Eggerman is a beautiful memorial to her father and captures vividly one aspect of what she remembers of him. It honors and preserves the connection between them. I show you these images in the hopes that perhaps you may find it meaningful and even healing to create images like this for yourself or for others. Our photographic art can move beyond what I think of as straight photography. We can, if we're drawn to, create more overtly spiritual art using a variety of techniques in camera and afterwards. Sometimes I find I can express my spiritual stirrings more eloquently in images than I can in words. To me, this image symbolizes the unity of all the races of humanity, embraced by divine light. I see black, white, red, and yellow in the upper left, all embraced by a being of light in the lower right. Mandalas are a form of spiritual art that have been used since the 1st century BC in spiritual practices including meditation and centering prayer. I'm sometimes moved to create mandalas from my photographs. This one I call the shaman's drum. It was made from a photograph of the wing of a Harris hawk. Mandalas like these can be used as the focus for meditation, for going into our stillness and connecting with the divine, whatever that may mean for us. I've created a whole series of these, and I can imagine them being hung in a yoga studio or a retreat center. Spiritual energy is pretty challenging to photograph directly, but through the creative process, I can depict it in a way that is meaningful to me. I call this image When Two Soulmates Meet, and it represents to me the powerful mystical energy of two souls connecting. This abstract On Our Way Home represents souls on their journey along a golden road into the mystery that awaits us after death. I was startled when I saw the Disney Pixar movie Soul to see a representation of death very similar to this. I call this image released. For me, it's an image about dying, but of course, each viewer will bring their own interpretation to the image. Here, I was able to express my perception of the journey into the unknown realm beyond death, but to someone else, the image might mean something else entirely, and that's fine. We all read and interpret art through the lens of our own hearts, so we may each see something a little different. I really can't put the message of this image into words, but that's kind of the point of making it. I call it Storm, and for me, it's full of spiritual mystery and symbolism. It's an expression of my soul. Just before I close, I want to say a few things about light. Photographers seek the light, and spiritual seekers also seek the light. The symbolism of light is ubiquitous. The Buddhists speak about enlightenment. Christ said, "I am the light of the world." Diwali and Hanukkah are festivals of light. Angels are often thought of as beings of light. In modern secular times, we read of people who have clinically died, and they are revived and tell stories of going to the light. We also speak of seeing the light and being a beacon of light in the world. Gandhi said, "In the midst of darkness, light persists." Whatever you believe or don't believe, the symbolism of light is everywhere. As I've advanced in my photographic journey and in my spiritual journey, I find that I am more and more aware of and even obsessed with light. In my creative life, I seek the light literally, and as a human being, I seek it spiritually, even and perhaps especially in the darkest times. For me, these are parallel journeys. Music can have great power to move us spiritually. My tribute to the cello features light in the darkness in recognition of what music can bring to us. As I look for literal light as a photographer, I keep reminding myself to allow the light of the sacred to penetrate me through my busyness and mundane concerns. This first quote by the artist Mondrian was written for artists. The position of the artist is humble. He is essentially a channel. The second quote from the Kabbalah was directed to us as human beings. We receive the light, then we impart it. Thus, we repair the world. I think both quotes are equally applicable to us as both artists and as people. At our best, we can be channels to bring light into the world, both literally and figuratively. And so, knowing that I am here on earth for such a short time, I ask myself, what kind of footprints do I want to leave? I want to leave love. I want to leave gentleness, reverence, respect, and caring. I truly believe we're here on this planet to be angels for each other. I make photographs because it reminds me of the sacredness and the beauty of everyday life, and it helps me stay on track. Maybe it does the same for you. Thanks for joining me for this exploration of photography as a spiritual practice. I hope you found some inspiration here. If you did, please leave a comment and consider subscribing, and check out my other tutorials and image slideshows. May you be richly blessed on your journey.